In our contemporary time, many people ask themselves, does God exist? If you know someone or if you have a friend who has this question, you can help your friend. The answers can be discussed using philosophy, science, and moral theology. A famous philosopher named Thomas Aquinas wrote in his Summa Theologica the 5 ways to prove God's existence. They are the first mover, the first maker, the necessary being, the most perfect being, and the designer creator. So, in his first way of explaining the existence of God, he focused on the motion. According to St. Thomas, the world is in constant movement, and all these movements has a mover. And if you trace it all the way back to the very first motion, you will end up with the very first mover. And according to St. Thomas, this first mover, who nobody else has caused it to move, is God. So in his second way, St. Thomas then focuses on the cause and effect. According to him, in this world, all the effects has a cause. And each of these effects, if you trace it all the way to the very beginning, you will end up with the very first cause. And according to St. Thomas, this first cause is God. In his third way, St. Thomas focuses on contingency. According to him, everything in this world is contingent. That is, that it depends on something else for its existence. The world itself is dependent on something for its existence. And this something that the world is dependent on for its existence is God. In his fourth way, St. Thomas now focuses on perfection. According to him, in this world, there are higher and lesser degrees of perfection. These degrees are in an order, and from this order, there exists the highest degree, which is also the cause of all that exists in that order. Now, that highest degree and maximum perfection is God. In his last explanation, St. Thomas focuses on order. According to him, order is present in the world's atmosphere. Behind this order is an intelligence, or shall we say a designer, who is responsible for all of it. According to St. Thomas, this designer is God. Another argument is called ontological argument. This comes from the word ontology, which is the philosophical study of being. These are the three important persons that made this argument famous. In this argument, God is referred here as the maximally great being. So, according to this argument, it's possible that a maximally great being exists. A maximally great being exists in some possible world. Now, if a maximally great being exists in some possible world, therefore it exists in every possible world. A maximally great being exists in every possible world, then it exists in the actual world. A maximally great being exists in the actual world, therefore a maximally great being exists. So, according to this argument, God exists. So, in other words, if it is possible that God exists, then it follows logically that God does exist. From philosophy, let's go now to science. Let's find out how science points to God. There's now been a consensus among scientists and astronomers that the universe started with the very first big event, which they call the Big Bang. And this Big Bang points to us that this universe has a beginning. This beginning also tells us that before the Big Bang, there was absolutely nothing. And science tells us that nothing comes out of nothing. And so they are now wondering what caused this Big Bang. If there was nothing, what was there before the Big Bang? And what caused the Big Bang? And so, since nothing comes out of nothing, science has now reached its end point. Where reason ends, faith begins. And faith tells us that what caused this Big Bang out of nothing is God. So science tells us that the universe sprang into being from a single point in the finite past. And this argument is called cosmological argument. According to this argument, everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. And this cause is God. God is the one who caused the universe to exist. So these are the three leading cosmologies who made this argument popular. Alexander Vilenkin, who is one of the three cosmologists, said, any universe which has, on average, been expanding throughout its history cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning. Scientists can no longer hide behind a past eternal universe. He said, there is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. And so the very big problem for scientists is how do you explain how the universe began, since before it began there was nothing, and nothing comes out of nothing. It is therefore reasonable to believe that God exists, a supreme, intelligent, and infinite being exists, and he created the universe. According to science, the whole universe is fine-tuned. There is fine-tuning in the whole universe. So according to science, the whole universe is governed by laws. And these laws, they have a formula, and in this formula, we have constants and quantities. These constants have values that works within a very narrow range. Now this is very important because in this narrow range, it is only here where life is permitted. Outside of this range, life is not permitted. So, if there is a change in these constants, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere if those values that exist in those narrow range suddenly changes, even by a small value. Let's take for instance gravity. Here we have the constant in the formula. If gravity varied by 1 in 10 to the 60 parts, none of us would exist. So just even a small change in these values, just a small increment would already not permit life to exist. And that is how fine-tuned our universe is. In the expansion rate formula, we have a constant here. A change in this constant by 1 in 10 to 120 would already cause the universe to be life prohibiting. The third one, mass and energy. So if the mass and energy of the early universe were not evenly distributed to a precision of 1 part in 10 to the 10 power to the 123 power, the universe would be hostile to life of any kind. Even Stephen Hawking could not deny what is observed in the universe. According to him, the remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. As we look for reasons why there is fine-tuning in the universe, our three options are: could it have been caused by necessity? Or could it have been caused by chance? Or was it caused by someone who designed it that way? So let's find out what is the cause of fine-tuning in the universe. Now, the first two, which is necessity and chance, does not seem to agree with the finding of entropy, because entropy tells us that there is a greater chance for life not to exist in the universe, and a very low chance for fine-tuning the universe in order for life to be permitted. So, necessity and chance as a cause of the fine-tuning is already not logical, and we are left with one answer, and that is design. The universe was intentionally designed to permit life to begin. So the findings in science points to us that there is someone who designed the universe so that life will be permitted. According to a famous physicist, Paul Davies, there is for me a powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. Here we have a picture of our Milky Way galaxy, and in that small dot is where our solar system is. And our galaxy is just one dot here in this very big universe. And just imagine that the whole universe is fine-tuned. So, according to the scripture, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. There's a name for this argument. It is called teleological argument. According to this argument, fine-tuning is either caused by physical necessity, chance, or design. But it is not due to physical necessity or chance, and therefore it is due to design. From science, let's go now to the explanation in moral theology, and this is called the moral argument. Now, if God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. And therefore, if objective values do not exist, no one can say who is right and wrong. One group of people would say abortion is okay, but another group would say no, abortion is a sin. Now, if both are equal, who is right? Those who are in favor of abortion would say to those who are against it, abortion for us is not a sin. What they actually mean is your moral values are yours and not mine. For them, morality depends on the individual. This is what we call moral relativism. The problem with moral relativism is very evident when you look at these pictures. You know that there is really something wrong when people say morality depends on the individual. You know in yourself that arson is not right. A lot of people get hurt. And yet these people who do the burning would say what they are doing is right. And destroying government property for them is right. So, doing wrong, is this just a personal preference or an opinion? If God does not exist, we should view human behavior in the same way. No action should be considered right or wrong. Is this correct? So there has to be something or someone that exists before us and is higher than each of us that can serve as our basis or serve as a moral standard so we can say who is right and who is wrong. God is our moral standard, not the individual opinion. Having God as our moral standard, we can go beyond our individual opinion and we can say what is right and what is wrong. Going back to our earlier question, if God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. But the problem is, good and bad, right and wrong do exist. So in our moral argument, if objective moral values and duties do not exist, God does not exist. But objective moral values and duties do exist. Therefore, God exists. Our conclusion is God is the best explanation of the origin of the universe. God is the best explanation of the fine-tuning of the universe for intelligent life. God is the best explanation of the objective moral values and duties in the world. God is the best explanation of the historical facts concerning the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. God can be personally known and experienced. For more topics in theology, please visit our YouTube channel, Theology Explained for Beginners. Thank you very much.